there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss American Trading Corporation. And you are tuned into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. And we do have a war taking place right now. It's been going on for quite a while, actually, but the war seems to be intensifying this year, especially with the trade war, with all the tariffs. And we're seeing the markets respond to this war, specifically as it pertains to what's happening with gold and silver. And Chris, we're going to talk here today. We've never talked about El Salvador on our podcast,
Yeah,
and we
it's a
are going to talk
first.
about them today. This is a first time for everything, they say, and this is El Salvador on the Secret War on Cash. So El Salvador diversifies into gold with $50 million purchase as yellow metal breaks new all-time highs. So I saw the headline, and 50 million in the grand scheme of things doesn't really seem like a lot.
Mhm.
The especially, I don't know, I didn't know this, maybe you did, Chris, but El Salvador has been, since I think it was, what they say here, 2020 or 2021, been buying a ton of Bitcoin.
Yeah,
The
that's interesting.
like 690 September of 2021, 697 million in Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
it's number one, it is interesting that they took that aggressive of a play in crypto, but they did so in anticipation of the changing global marketplace and economy, and that being perhaps the currency of the future. But now they're getting into metal, and I think, to
Hmm.
me, this just speaks to the uncertainty that exists in our market and the economy, globally and domestically, and the fact that people see, hey, there might be some trouble coming. So is there anything more, like, tell us a little bit about El Salvador, or what your thoughts are on
Yeah.
why they're doing this?
Well, what's interesting also is, yes, $50 million, compared to a lot of nations isn't a lot, but they're increasing their reserves from about 150 million in gold to 200. So that's a pretty good percentage jump. And they're doing so when gold's hovering right around $3,600 an ounce. So all those people that say, "Oh, gold's too high right now, maybe I should wait for a little dip before I buy," you have central banks continuing to buy at these levels because they know paper currency and paper money is going to continue to deflate. And if you're buying and holding for a longer term position, as they are, or for stability, it's a pretty safe buy, even at these levels. So that's one thing that I think is
That
important.
that's a very good point, Chris, because there are a lot of people who suggest that, okay, it's already moved, or I will tell you, based on experience, and I know you've run into this as well, they'll talk to
Mhm.
perhaps their registered advisor or their financial planner, who in most instances is not doesn't deal in gold, and or
Mhm.
is tends to be a little gold averse because it's not really something that's directly related to the services they provide. And
Right.
so they'll tell the people, well, gold, get an ETF or maybe get a mining share. No, these banks and these institutions and governments, they're buying physical metal. And your point was spot on. Like, with gold at 3,600 an ounce right now, they're not buying it in anticipation of it going to half that. They're
Right.
buying it in anticipation of it going to twice that, if not more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, that's exactly it. That's a big point, and the fact that they're also buying Bitcoin, which again is a totally different beast than gold. I know we're talking about both of them in this story. I don't believe Bitcoin has near the security, but it does show you that they know what isn't working is the U.S. dollar and other paper currencies for the most part, and so they are getting their money outside of the traditional system and hedging themselves with alternatives. And certainly, I think gold is much more secure than Bitcoin. Not to say that Bitcoin's a bad thing. If you want to, put a little bit of money there, I think the big thing is, don't have all of your eggs in one basket, obviously, and make sure that you have, tangibles mixed in there. Because no matter what happens to the economy or the world, we know that gold has been around and a good, stable store of wealth for thousands of years.
Right, absolutely right. Well, and it's interesting. We've talked about cryptos and Bitcoin, really all the digital currencies,
Hmm.
in the course of the last couple of years, and especially initially, getting into crypto seems like such a leap because there's lack of You do have privacy, you do have things that would be looked upon as beneficial, but part of the
Mhm.
problem is, there really is not any oversight or regulation to it. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to money, that can be a little bit frightening. But
Mhm.
as we're talking about it now, and you look at El Salvador, and all this Bitcoin that they're holding on to, really, what do they have to lose? Because the US dollar, if that's your other option, really is about as much air as crypto is, to be quite frank with you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the dollar is just becoming, it's like literally evaporating before our eyes. So,
Mhm.
well, let's get into our second article here. Morgan Stanley is talking about how the Morgan Stanley US dollar decline forecast, 2025 slowdown expected. Well, I don't think this really comes as a shock, but again, this speaks to the vulnerability and really the risk that people have when they are invested in dollars or dollar denominated type assets. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that, stocks and bonds and mutual funds, they only the value they have to any of us is what we're able to cash them in for, which would be a conversion into dollars. But if you're converting it into a dollar or a currency that is not only on the decline, but its long-term future stability is grossly in question, that's
Yeah.
concerning to me. And I think the average investor should be concerned about that as well, Chris.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand here, look, Morgan Stanley, isn't just making this up. They're not just saying this to, put more pressure on the dollar. I mean, they're using numbers to tell you, look, the dollar has already dropped 11% in the first half of the year, 2025. That's a big drop, and for people that are happy that they're getting maybe 3 or 4% in a bank or in CDs, which is a good number compared to the last 10 or 15 years. Somebody making 4% is still losing a significant chunk of their purchasing power. If the dollar lost 11%, that means prices have gone up. So even though they've made a little bit of interest, they're in trouble. That's where using something like gold and silver, a physical hedge against the dollar, can benefit you. So the dollar's lost 11% and gold and silver are up 25, 30%, approximately a year to date. So they've grown enough to offset the losses that people are experiencing in the value of their currency. And that's one of the big things that I like to highlight here. And guess what? Just like we were talking in the previous article, at 3,600, it's still a value. Well, because Morgan Stanley is saying to expect another 10% drop in the dollar through the end of next year. And like most of their predictions, they're usually a bit conservative. So I think if they're saying 10%, don't be surprised if we see a 15 or 20% drop in the dollar next year, which means we're going to see that or likely even more in physical metals. So that's
Right.
that's they're not talking specifically about that, but you need to use this information and common sense to see what is happening and do something now to protect yourself.
Sure. Well, and there are just so many moving parts and so many different things that are changing. In fact, I'd read not long ago, very recent actually, is gold now again over 3,600 an ounce. Goldman Sachs was talking about how gold could rally to almost 5,000 an ounce
Right.
if something happens with the Fed and their independence, where they called it, I believe, damaged. And
Mhm.
if investors just even took a small portion of what they have in treasuries and put that
Yep.
into gold, $5,000 an ounce gold is right around the corner. And let me tell you,
Yeah.
that's something that is in fact, it was, I believe, Robert Kiyosaki, give or take a month or two ago, was talking about how the financial world or investment advisors out there who are putting people in treasuries right now are putting them in direct harm's way, because
Yeah.
our treasuries are not, they're not stable, they're not, people aren't buying them, there is concern about it. And so again, to your point, Chris, this speaks to why people should be diversified in gold. So how could people learn more about gold and learn more, how they might actually even put a portion of their assets into gold?
I would recommend contacting us for one of our information packets. We'll put together a few, basic materials to kind of walk people through the process before we expect them to run. You can do that by visiting the website at swissamerica.com, or by giving us a call or a text at 1-800-289-2646. Let us know that you saw us on the podcast and you just want to learn a little bit more, and we'll get you some materials. We have a lot of agents that can help explain some of the basics to you. We're not a high pressure sales company. What we're really trying to do, even just by using this podcast, is to educate people on what's going on. Once people have an understanding of the challenge and what some of their options are, it's usually easy for them to move into some sort of protection.
Well, that's fantastic. All right, Chris, thank you so much. And for those of you that have tuned into this podcast, thanks for doing that. And if you're not subscribed, please do so, as we look forward to talking to you in the future. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you real soon.
Yep. Take care.